Well, welcome to our first Info for Power series. We are so honored to have Emily Levy of Audit USA join us and share why capturing ballot images is so very important. We're going to let her talk, give us an overview, and then let her answer our questions for like 10 minutes overview, 10 minutes Q&A. All right.
You ready for me?
Yeah, take the wheel, Emily.
Okay.
And by the way, I just want to say I've known Emily she's been in this election integrity cause as long as I have and worked tirelessly for this cause. And so it's extra special that she's joined us. Okay, go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Sherry. I appreciate you inviting me to be on the call, and thanks to everybody for spending your time here. I know this is the systems that we use to cast and count our votes are not the sexiest cause, and you all have many other places you could be right now, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I am calling in from my home in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am the Director of Communications, like Sherry said, for Audit USA, which is Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. We used to be Audit AZ, Audit Arizona, which is why I said that by accident, and we're expanding this year into a national organization. If you're looking for us online, you can find us at auditelectionsusa.org. And that's elections with an S on the end. The project that I'm working on and that Audit USA is working on now has to do with a method that communities can use, a method we're trailblazing for communities to be able to use to check the accuracy of election results. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it is. But first, what I want to say is that what I'm talking about here has to do with the vulnerabilities in vote counting. And I know that many people in Oregon are really happy with the vote by mail system that you have, which is the system that you have for marking and submitting your ballots, but that you can vote by mail doesn't actually have any bearing really on how the votes are counted. And so I'm not talking anything about that system. That's sort of another whole conversation about whether that's a secure system. But what I'm talking about is what happens to the ballots after they arrive at the elections offices, whether you drop them off in person, whether you send them in by mail, or whether in other places you might vote in a voting station. So at a precinct or a voting center. So over time, when there have been questions about whether the accuracy, whether the announced vote count is accurate, members of groups like the one that I'm in and organizations that Sherry has worked for have tried to get access to the paper ballots where paper ballots exist to check to see if the vote totals are correct. And what we found is that we are often told, almost always told, no, we can't give you access to the paper ballots. We can't let you see them, or we can't let you handle them to count them, because these are federally protected records and also protected by state law, and you might tamper with them in some way, and these are precious, and so we can't let you get at them. And that makes it really hard to find out what's going on. They'll say, oh, we can only let you get at them if you have proof that there has been tampering. But without actually accessing the evidence, it's hard to have proof. So that's been a really frustrating thing over the years. And now there's newer technology that's being used in almost half the country to count votes, including in 11 counties in Oregon. As far as we know, there may be more, but at least 11 counties. That is digital ballot scanners. So there have been, those of you who have been paying some attention to election systems around the country may be aware that almost the entire country has been voting on one of two kinds of machines. There's the direct record electronic machines that are usually touchscreen machines, and then there have been optical scanners which use optical technology to count the votes on paper ballots. And neither one of those systems is good. the touchscreens are worse, but I'm kind of not going to get into that. But what the newer technology is another form of scanner. But instead of optical technology, it's digital technology. And the way it works is that for every time a ballot is fed into it, the scanner takes a digital image, like basically a photograph of that ballot, and then counts the votes on those images, not the votes on the ballots themselves, it just seems a little bit odd. I don't know why it's set up to work that way. Actually, the software, the election systems companies say that it's for auditing and adjudication purposes that these ballot images can be used. Now, it's true that they are not the originals, and there's some question, like we need to make sure that they really are accurate. But the great thing about it is because they're ballot images, because they're images and not their original paper ballot, a copy can be made, or many copies can be made, of that whole set of images, and the copies can be released to the public for counting while still retaining the original paper ballots. And the better ones of these digital ballot image systems, actually, when the ballot is fed in, they mark the ballot and the corresponding image with the same number so that they can be matched up again later if you need to check to see if everything is correct. So they don't match it with the voter, so it is still anonymous in that way. It keeps the voter anonymous. But this technology has created the possibility for communities to request and get access to the full set of ballot images and actually gather to count those votes. And can do that could even do that at the precinct by precinct level, that the technology exists for that to happen. So in some states, unfortunately, election officials are destroying these images. Now, we are absolutely convinced that that's illegal, that there are state laws and also federal laws protecting these records, protecting anything that's part of the counting of the votes from being destroyed. Yet there's, through some combination, I think in some cases it's ignorance, or misunderstanding of how the systems work. In some cases it could be malicious. We're finding that the ballot images are in many places being destroyed. So what Audit USA is doing is three parts. The first is working to preserve the ballot images, and that is where we can, working with election officials to make sure that they understand the importance of the ballot images, what they are, and that they're legally required to be protected, and how to go about doing that, and that sort of thing. That's the first thing we're working on. And then if they won't work with us, we sometimes take them to court to get an order protecting the ballot images. And then the second stage of what we're doing is making sure that we can get access to them through public records requests, and that can happen in a timely way right after an election. And then the third part is training communities to actually count the votes on the images as a check against the official count. So that's basically what we're working on. And as we move forward, we're going to need a lot of volunteers. Right now, we need some more volunteers to do research in different states about kind of where this technology is in use already, where communities are considering moving to this technology so that we can make sure they get the best systems possible. And then also kind of who are the people that we need to talk to make sure that they understand what's going on. We're putting together educational materials to educate the public and also to educate elections officials and legislators. So if this is something that interests you, I invite you to go to auditelectionsusa.org and fill out our volunteer form. We're just getting our system up and rolling, so we may be slow at getting back to you, but we will be gearing up our program to enroll people in doing the research and helping this along in different places. And then, Sherry, I want to invite you to actually talk about how this is related to your recent campaign.
Oh, yeah, I was going to chime in that some jurisdictions require to have legal standing in order to request recounts or things of this nature, and because they don't quite understand that the precept that Audit USA is working on is it is part and parcel to our election data. It's what actually in the end, it's the interpretation of the ballot. So therefore you can't get rid of that interpreter. But in our case, I put in a public records request because I had recently run for county clerk. And I thought that is a beautiful match of my position as chair of the Election Integrity Caucus and as a way to do a test case, because I could use that in case it were needed. So I put in a public records request, and oftentimes Emily will tell you that county clerks will say, yes, we can do this and that, and then it goes to legal or some higher authority, and then they find out that it's far more complex. But the good news is Clackamas, Andrew Jones, claims that he has no problem with it, and he's conferring with legal, because I put him on notice that it's illegal to destroy those ballot images. And so wouldn't it be amazing if in short order we were able to get those ballot images from my election in Clackamas County just as a test to set up a best practice for everywhere else and make Oregon a model for the nation. That and Ron Wyden's risk limiting audit, we would have a really amazing, the highest election integrity in the land. So anyway, I don't know if this is all confusing to everyone. It's kind of dry stuff, but the really beautiful thing about this ballot image solution is it truly democratizes the tabulation, and it's almost cost-free. And that part about hand counting, we're going to have another evening. I'm hoping to get this county clerk from Wisconsin that Emily pointed me to, who has this incredible click system where they go zoom through ballots, and we could do that as our own constituency group and test out the precinct data, how it matched up with my election just as a test. Oh, there is a question here.
No question, more of a comment. I wanted to respond. Yes, it was interesting to me. The only thing that kept popping up in my mind was personnel. We had a few years back personnel who had gone into the counting system and did it in inappropriate behavior. And when is the training going to begin for the volunteers?
Good question, and I don't know that yet. So some of it depends on Sherry. If we can do a pilot project with the election that Sherry was a candidate in, it's going to depend on when we get access to the ballot images, and the training for those volunteers will probably be, I don't know, Sherry, do you think we would probably train people the same day we were doing the counting?
I think we're going to have a conference with the county clerk from Wisconsin that is so amazing doing this.
She's actually not a county clerk. She's,
activist. I forgot her name, but
Karen
I'm going to have her on and share with us, and she can advise us how much time she thinks we need.
Okay. And then in terms of volunteering to help secure ballot images around the country to keep them from being destroyed and help with educating communities, I will train volunteers as soon as I've got volunteers who are interested in being trained.
Okay.
And so reaching out to us through the volunteer form at auditelectionsusa.org would be great.
Are there any other comments or questions? We just have 4 more minutes until our next speaker, Eileen, comes on board. I think that the thing that above, no matter what you think, that will verify, give us confidence in our vote, because we will be able to actually verify the final result, which is not something that's easily done. And if it were easily done, we wouldn't have spent 10 years trying to fight for it.
So here's something else that I would like to say, that I think it can get really overwhelming to think about how are we going to mobilize communities all around the country, especially in really large urban areas, to count the votes on ballots that are sometimes very complex, involve a lot of different races, there's millions of people voting, etc. And one of the things about this is that one of the reasons we in the election integrity movement believe that there has been so much tampering with elections is that the way things are now, they can be tampered with impunity, meaning the people who do the tampering are not getting caught and they're not getting punished. And through this system, we believe that we make it a lot more likely that people who tamper with elections will be caught and then can be punished, and that having the public watching in this way in many places, even if it's not everywhere, is really going to increase the risk for tampering with elections and will serve as a deterrent. So that's really part of what we're trying to do, is put any would-be riggers or hackers on notice that we are paying attention and that we're coming after them.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again, Sherry, for inviting me. And
yes.
I'm really looking forward to coming up there and helping you with this pilot project when you get access to the images.
I love it. Yes, we'll keep you posted and we'll have you back and report back. And I think that the very key thing is how you are winning cases across the country on this basis that it is evidentiary to data that's part of our election records that must be archived, that we cannot no longer just override them. In Clackamas previously, we would just override this very important data once we needed to use that memory card again. So that's all I have to say.
That's what we need to prevent from happening. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks,
everybody.
Emily. Take it away. Oh, so Eileen Reeves here of the National Popular Vote Oregon. Many of you already know her quite well, and she's going to speak to this problem we have with 5 presidential elections, the last 5 presidential elections resulting in 2 electeds, quote unquote, that did not get the popular vote. Okay, take it away, Eileen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro, Sherry, and for the invite to speak tonight. So I'm just going to ask all of you to start with the basic question. Do you think that whoever gets the most votes for President of the United States of America should be the person that ends up in the White House? Put aside whatever preconceptions you may have about how the Electoral College works or what the history is, just the very basic fundamental democratic ideal that if millions of people go out and vote on election day, that whoever gets the most votes should win. It's how we elect every other office in this country, from dog catcher to mayor to governor, but it's not how we elect the president. So the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a way to change that. The way that we go about this, currently with our Electoral College and the way that the current system is, 48 states, including Oregon, decide their electors using winner-take-all laws. So there is an Oregon state law that says we want our presidential electors, in this case we have 7, we want them all to go to whoever gets the most votes in Oregon. It doesn't matter if one candidate gets 50% or if they get 90%. However much you get, you have to get a majority to get the electors for Oregon. Like I said, that's us and 47 other states, with the only states doing something different being Nebraska and Maine. What we're trying to do is change this winner-take-all law. We're working within the Electoral College to change how we elect the president. So the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an agreement among the states that guarantees the U.S. presidency to the candidate who receives the most votes overall. So we get rid of the winner-take-all law, and instead we say, we want our 7 electors to go to whoever wins the most votes nationwide. And we don't do it in a silo. We say, we're gonna do this along with other states, and we're all gonna change our law at the same time when a majority of us have signed on to this interstate compact, and we have more than 270 or more electoral votes committed, and effectively would be able to decide the presidential election by popular vote. So it's got a kicker. It doesn't change until we get to 270. It doesn't abolish the Electoral College, and it's a state-by-state decision. The the good news about this is 12 states, or I should say 12 jurisdictions, which is 11 states and DC, have already signed on to this compact. So this isn't some absolutely impossible, far away thing. We're 63% of the way there. California, Connecticut, DC, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, Washington, and Vermont have all already signed on to this compact. We have 172 electoral votes committed, and Connecticut was our most recent win, and they just passed this in 2018 in the most recent legislative session. So the purpose of this compact is to move us to a national campaign. The basic idea is that every vote in this country that is cast for president should be equal, and every state should be a battleground state. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about the way that the Electoral College is supposed to work. A lot of things that we hear quite frequently is people think that the Electoral College was designed to help protect small states and to make their voices heard. That's not actually how the Electoral College was founded. Even if it was, if you look at it, out of the 10 smallest states, only one of them is actually a battleground state and gets any attention during the general election for president. And that state is New Hampshire. And it doesn't get attention because it's one of the smallest states and the Electoral College prioritizes it. It's just a battleground state. So in the 2016 presidential election, all of our presidential or general election campaigns happened in Colorado, Florida, Iowa, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Virginia. If you do not live in one of those states, like we do not here, no one is coming to us. No, there were no general election campaigns in Oregon. We had people here coming in fundraising during the primary, having very expensive private dinners. They'll come and happily take our money, but they don't campaign here. This is especially important for us in Oregon because of the fact that Washington, Oregon, and California they already know how that's going to go in the Electoral College. They know that those electoral votes are going to go for the Democrat, no matter what the Democrat campaign's on. So we don't matter. Earthquake readiness doesn't matter. The issues that are important to the Pacific Northwest have no bearing in a presidential election. Instead, we see people battling it out for swing votes in Florida. Very notably in the 2000 election, Medicare Part D, that was done because along the I-5 corridor, there was a number of voters that were entering or in retirement age that really cared about prescription drugs. As a result, that became a huge campaign issue because they were trying to win those specific votes in Florida. I personally don't think that that's how an election for the president of the United States should be run. We should have candidates that are really engaging with people across the country and getting their opinions and finding out what matters to people regardless of their political party. The idea here is to make every state a battleground state. People think that that's impossible, and I hear a lot, like, no one's ever going to come to Oregon. We're still not going to matter. It's not going to change anything. But in actuality, so we had right around 400 general election campaign events in the 2016 election. If we have 400 and we have 435 representatives, you can do some rough math. And essentially, we would actually, if all of the campaign visits were split up based on population, which is logically how this would happen, you can look at the number of people we have in Congress, and we would have roughly 5 campaign events. Now, can I say that they would be evenly distributed throughout the state? Probably not. But we also might even get more than 5 because we would be a target for Southwest Washington as well for candidates to be coming here and really marketing themselves to people in the Washington area. So I'm going to pause and actually give more time for questions because I believe that most of the time people have a lot of misconceptions in their head. So I'd like to be able to answer those at length. So can I open it up for questions now?
I just unmuted everybody to make it easier. Eileen, I see something that I never grasped before, and that is when this was presented, an earlier form in California, they were calling it the blue state poison pill because this is different in that it doesn't go into effect till everyone signs on. There's a threshold that I grasp that. So there's no sacrificial first people that sign on in the early stages giving up their power. It's something that it doesn't go into effect till everyone signs on, or
Exactly.
a threshold.
Yeah, so as an interstate compact, none of the state laws change until 270 electoral votes are committed. They have to be committed 90 days before the next general election for presidency, or excuse me, not 90 days, 6 months. So they have to be done 6 months beforehand. So there's no chance of any state changing their laws during the general election campaign. That's not allowed. And they also cannot pull out after the general election. Any state is not able to change this until after the next inauguration of the president.
Mm-hmm. And what are the arguments that any other things that people are throwing out that are misconceptions? If no one else has a question, I'll just ask that.
Yeah. So a lot of things we get about small states, people don't really understand the history of the Electoral College. They think that the founders set it up that we have to use winner-take-all laws. But the founders actually, they couldn't decide how this could be done. They couldn't all come to a consensus. The Electoral College is rooted in slavery and the fact that the Three-Fifths Compromise, the southern states really didn't want to be able to give up all of their political power to the northern states, knowing that this slavery would become an issue that if the majority had the power, they would make illegal. So that's how we ended up with our people that have been enslaved only being counted as 3/5 of the vote in terms of representation, so that they would have greater weight in the Electoral College and also in Congress. Something else people often don't grasp or just are not aware of, the U.S. Constitution says each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. So it's very specifically left up to the state legislature to make this decision. The founders wanted the states to have that power. And something else we hear a lot, it wasn't actually until the 10th election for U.S. presidency that a majority of states used the winner-take-all laws that we have now. So this isn't even how it was in the beginning, and it's just what we've come to accept. And so it's good to take a step back and realize that we don't have to do it this way. And specifically, I should say, here in Oregon, we have been considering this bill since 2009. It passed the House in 2009, 2013, 2015, and 2017. Every single time it has been denied a vote in the Senate. 2017 was the first time that we were able to even get a committee hearing, and that was because of a lot of public support and literally thousands and thousands of Oregonians contacting their legislators and saying, we want you to consider this bill. It has been blocked by Senator Peter Courtney, the president of the Senate, and Senator Ginny Burdick, the chair of the Rules Committee. They, in my opinion, are blocking the democratic process and using their power to do so. Peter Courtney has never been a fan of this bill, so he continues to block it. So if he is your senator, bring this up at the next town hall. I won't suggest that you ask for a meeting with him because he won't meet with anyone about national popular vote. But definitely encourage you. I have on the next slide here a quick link that you can follow for writing your legislator. If you follow this link, you can put in your zip code. It will contact your state representative, your state senator, Senator Peter Courtney, as well as Governor Brown, to let them all know that you support this bill. Another thing you can do is ask candidates while they're out on the campaign trail if they support this bill. We do have a majority of support, our vote count in the Senate. We know that if this bill was allowed to come up on the floor, it would pass, which is really frustrating, especially when it's a bill about voting. So we're strongly encouraging people to go to town halls, ask potential candidates, including incumbents, if they would support the House-passed version of this bill. And if they don't know about it, tell them to check it out because this is a really important issue and was one of the most talked about issues in the building down in Salem last year. So it's definitely going to be back in 2019. It's already become a campaign issue. Senator Peter Courtney did have a primary challenger for the first time in 20 years, this being one of the reasons she ran. She was not successful in that primary election, but he does also have a general election challenger who does support the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact.
Eileen?
We have one question, it looks like, Emily.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So I have a question, but before I ask it, most of the people who have called in are on the phone and they can't see the link. So do you want to,
Oh my goodness.
let's read it out loud. So it's bit.ly, so it's B like boy, IT like Tom, .ly/ and then the rest of these letters are all capital, ORNPV. So
you know what? I'm thinking maybe I should send that and as a follow-up to this meeting, just the 2 action items each of you asked for and send it to me, and then I will send a blast as our follow-up.
do you have everybody's email address that's on the call?
Well, that's a good question.
You can just put on the website.
Oh yeah, we're going to soon have our website up too. But
So, okay, so let's just do this again in case anybody's trying to write it down. So it's bit.ly/ORNPV for Oregon National Popular Vote. And I know with bit.ly, which is a link shortener, sometimes you have to put in the http:// for the link to work. So if you're having trouble getting there, try it with the http part. So then my question is, I have always thought that this just seems like such an elegant solution, the interstate compact, and I'm curious why the people who are opposing it in the state Senate, what do they say are their reasons for opposing it, and are there other reasons that you think are their real reasons that they're not saying?
Yeah,
good question.
that is a great question. So from 2009 to 2017, Peter Courtney, the Senate president, just said he didn't support it. He didn't think that this was the way to go about it, but he never was really pushed on it. There honestly was not too much attention from his constituents and from people across the state as voters. But it was generally perceived to be that he just thinks that if we're going to change how we elect the president, we should do it through a constitutional amendment. He, in 2017,
this is editorializing, but that sounds to me like the kind of thing people say that isn't their real reason.
Yeah. It's not his real reason. I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's also, so in 2017, for the very first time, he said, if we are going to do this, we need to refer this issue to the voters because this is such an important matter the voters should decide. Now, he had never said that stance before. The idea of referring this issue to the voters had never come up before. This was essentially given as a workaround. It was a bill originally proposed by Senator Richard Devlin in the 2017 session. He told us after the session was over, or towards the end of it, I should say, that he proposed this because he just never thought that the genuine NPV bill would get through, and he thought this was an okay workaround. He actually, during testimony for the bill, the Senate held a hearing only when they would hold a hearing for both bills. So the clean NPV bill that had passed the House 4 times at that point, and the NPV refer bill. He said, I didn't ask for this hearing. I support the House passed version of the bill, and that was the one that I would prefer to see go forward. That didn't really matter because at that point, that's what Senator Peter Courtney had latched onto as his excuse. It's a very convenient excuse. It would cost $1 million to do a ballot campaign on this. It would divert all of the national resources here. It would make quite an interesting story for people looking at this from across the nation. If it works in their state, it would kind of set the precedent that you have to do it as a ballot initiative, or that that's a good solution when that's really not the case. And it's something that would definitely invite a lot of outside Oregon money in, because this is if we were to do it by ballot referral for the first time here, it would be a really good opportunity for people to kill the momentum nationwide. So there's a lot of reasons to oppose it, but most of all, it's if we already have a majority of senators supporting this bill, we don't need to do a ballot initiative. That's why we elect our senators, is for them to represent us. We've made our opinions loud and clear. Senator Peter Courtney had over 15,000 people email him about this last year. I should say last session, and referring to the 2017 full session. So they know the support there is there. So it's kind of a BS work excuse, in my opinion. My personal opinion of why Senator Courtney doesn't support this, as an individual grassroots organizer, not as, you know, a representative of a larger organization. I'm not. I think originally he didn't understand the bill, and he has now dug his heels in so deep that he refuses to back off of it. He originally he wouldn't meet with anyone. The person who, about this bill, he actually has one of the people he's thrown out of his office because they got into such a disagreement about this bill in 2009, and he hasn't taken a meeting with supporters of this bill since then. So there's not a lot of room to move him. What we are hoping for is that with continued pressure, we did see that he started thinking about maybe he would host something, or maybe he would allow a vote, I should say. With continued pressure in the 2019 session, I think he has to have this. He's had 2 challengers come out now because of this, and I think that he has to know that if he continues to not allow a vote on this bill, then it's going to trickle down to Senator Ginny Burdick, who is up for re-election in 2020. She will also have a challenger based on this issue if she does not support this bill and allow a vote. So I think that they have to know that the time has passed. So we'll continue to be pushing it. But yeah, honestly, it's just stubbornness at this point, I think.
Thank you for that thorough.
Can I ask a question about faithless electors?
Yes.
You propose changing the Oregon law. I think now it's to replace anyone who decides to vote their conscience and put in someone to vote the new winner take all. And in some states, they actually fine somebody who's not faithful. And there's also proposed uniform faithful elector act, which a lot of states are going to. So I was wondering what your stance is on that.
So as a grassroots organization of National Popular Vote Oregon, we don't have a stance on that. We kind of see that as a separate issue. But I will say that as an individual, yeah, if states are looking at how they allocate their electors, it needs to be a comprehensive review of, yeah, we should allocate them differently, and what other laws do we have on the books that may no longer be relevant and may need to be updated in order to make sure that our electors vote the way that we want them to. But yeah, so if someone is supposed to be an elector for a certain candidate, if they decide to be a faithless elector, they need to be replaced immediately with someone else. I personally support that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, very interesting.
Just Dan, I have a question or a comment, I guess. It's my understanding that if NPV went to referral, that if the referral passed to voters, if it passed an election or was adopted, then it would have to go back to the legislature to become legal, and the legislature would have to then vote on it to make it make the compact come law. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that the compact and the Constitution is written, Dan's analysis is correct. So because it says, the U.S. Constitution says that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. If they refer it to the voters, it still has to go back to the legislature. If the legislature did not take it up and said, oh, it's done by ballot initiative, we're members of the compact, it would jeopardize the validity of the compact whenever we did reach 270. And that would be a weak point for people to come and say, nope, Oregon's electoral votes don't count. Then the other situation is if they refer it to the voters and then it goes back to the legislature where they would have to vote on it, which is what we would be advocating for. it's just a public opinion poll at that point. You don't need to refer something to the voters if it's not actually going to change the law, and that is a huge waste of resources and time. So they need to do their job, do what they were elected to do, and vote on a bill and allow a vote on the bill.
Thank you.
This is very helpful for me. Any more questions to Eileen? And
okay.
And wonderful. Thank you so much. This was very clarifying. Thank you, Eileen.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll just kind of provide the closing statement of, like I said, we're about 63% of the way there, and this is not some far-fetched thing. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact has passed in at least one chamber in 11 additional states with 89 electoral votes. So this is happening. I would like to promise it to you by 2020. I don't feel good about that. I want to make it happen by 2020, but we are going to elect the president by national popular vote by 2024. And we need Oregon to get on board so that we can stop worrying about Oregon and work on other states.
Fantastic. Yeah, make Oregon the model.